There's an uncomfortable truth about policymaking. The people designing major policies rarely live inside the consequences of those policies. Not because they're villains, but because they're structurally insulated, and that insulation creates a deep disconnect. Look at where decision makers actually live. Politicians, senior bureaucrats, and policy advisors usually live in high-income neighborhoods where home values are often 2 to 3 times the national median. They're insulated from housing scarcity, overcrowding, rental competition, and rapid neighborhood change. Their children attend well-funded public schools in wealthy districts or private schools, so they don't experience overcrowded classrooms, under-resourced schools, language support shortages, or teacher burnout. Their healthcare access includes private insurance, low deductibles, fast specialist access, and minimal wait times, so they don't feel public system strain, emergency room delays, difficulty getting appointments, or the risk of medical bankruptcy. Economically, they have job security, savings, assets, and professional networks, so they don't live paycheck to paycheck, fear eviction, juggle gig work, or carry constant financial anxiety. When you live inside a well-functioning bubble, problems become abstract. If schools work well for you, it's hard to feel urgency about overcrowding. If housing is stable, rent crises feel theoretical. If healthcare is accessible, system strain feels exaggerated. The problems exist in spreadsheets, not in daily stress. This pattern isn't new. History repeats it. Marie Antoinette's apocryphal Let Them Eat Cake captures the gap between palace life and public hardship. Economists before the Great Depression analyzed worker conditions from comfort and missed the collapse. Architects of the 2008 financial crisis created complex financial products, lost none of their homes, and were bailed out while millions weren't. More recently, immigration policy is often designed in capitals and wealthy suburbs, but implemented in working-class neighborhoods where the strain is actually felt. Distance from consequences changes perception. When you don't experience friction directly, problems seem smaller. Housing is tight becomes, I can't afford to live near my job. Solutions seem simpler. People should just move to opportunity when you've never had to uproot your life with limited savings. Just learn new skills when you've never worked 2 jobs while trying to study. Trade-offs seem acceptable. Short-term adjustment for long-term growth sounds fine when you're not the one adjusting. Timelines feel reasonable. 10 or 15 years is acceptable when you're secure, not when you're struggling now. This isn't about lack of compassion. Even well-meaning people struggle to fully understand lives they don't live. Research on empathy gaps shows we systematically underestimate others' pain when we're comfortable. We overestimate how easily people can adapt. We assume our resilience applies universally. When policymakers are secure, they underestimate population strain. The feedback loop makes this worse. Who actually gets heard by power? Mostly other elites through professional networks, formal consultations dominated by organized groups, media voices from similar class backgrounds, and lobbyists with resources. Working-class people with multiple jobs, limited time, no connections, or immediate survival pressures rarely have access. So decision-makers hear from people like themselves or from professional intermediaries, reinforcing the bubble. Career incentives deepen the problem. Politicians operate on 2 to 4 year cycles, so they favor what looks good quickly over what works long-term. Bureaucrats advance by managing budgets, avoiding controversy, and executing leadership priorities, not by flagging uncomfortable realities or demanding difficult investments. Media experts and think tank voices advance by being quoted and provocative, not by being right or following up when predictions fail. Almost none of these roles carry consequences when policies fail for working-class communities. This disconnect erodes trust. When people live with policy consequences but have no voice in creating them, they notice. They feel leaders don't understand their lives or don't care. Often that perception is accurate. People making housing policy often own multiple properties. People making labor policy have job security. People making immigration policy live in stable, well-resourced areas. Trust collapses. This creates space for populism. When established leaders seem disconnected, people turn to outsiders who claim to understand them, validate frustration, and promise disruption. That response isn't irrational. If the system isn't responsive to your experience, disruption feels worth trying. The problem is that many populist leaders are just as insulated once in power. This isn't unsolvable. Bringing affected communities into decision-making would help, not symbolic consultation, but real authority through participatory budgeting, empowered community boards, and mandatory local impact assessments. Measuring what matters would help, tracking distribution, not just averages, affordability, not just output, strain, not just growth. Accountability would help, requiring decision-makers to spend time in affected communities, follow up on outcomes, face consequences for failed predictions, and be transparent about who benefits and who pays. Representation would help, with more leaders from working-class backgrounds, more diverse professional paths, and less insulation at the top. The people designing systems rarely live inside them. That's not malicious, but it's consequential. Insulation creates blind spots. Blind spots create bad policy. Bad policy creates frustration. And frustration, ignored long enough, creates instability. The solution isn't vilifying decision makers. It's reducing insulation. Bring affected voices into the rooms where decisions are made. Measure outcomes that matter to real lives. Create accountability for consequences. Until that happens, the disconnect will persist, and so will the dysfunction it creates. If this explains something you felt, share it. Subscribe for more honest systems analysis. Thanks for watching.